actually one of the things that I'm most passionate about is being a geek. In fact, so much so that I actually did my PhD looking at how people work on large projects. One of the nice parts was talking to people at large companies, Nokia, Google, Kronos, hearing different development practices, figuring out what's working, what's not working. And one of the things that I realized during that time was that a lot of these software engineering algorithms, most of that stuff has been done, but it's just not been applied to people in the right way. At the end of the day, it's sort of what I would call a UI issue. But just sort of going into this a little bit more detail, what do I really mean by dealing with code? To a large extent, I mean everything, but the three particular parts here, dealing with sort of complex, ugly, new code that you're looking at every so often. Most other code problems, trying to improve performance, or they involve looking at some amount of this stuff, and that's the part that I've been actually focusing on a lot. So why? You need a big picture view very often, no matter what you're doing. You often can't find the developer who's done that stuff, either because they've left. Facebook's IPOing. You could go. Some developers go join it. The best developers might be out. Or if it's an open source project, you don't necessarily know how to communicate with them. Documentation that you have gets out of date. But personally, for me, I'm somewhat of an introvert. I hate talking to people. Email works really nice, and that's I'm seeing more and more personally of a shift to that, and that's kind of the thing that I want to make happen. So just sort of focusing on the complex, ugly new code. At the end of the day, I think of this generally as an architectural problem. Sort of getting everybody having a view of that architecture. And to do a good job there, I've basically been talking to a lot of people. And I've heard a need for a couple of things. Build some of that stuff, and I want to launch some more stuff in the next 2-3 months. Part of that has been why I've been talking to a lot of people, and I'd love to talk to more people here. The core of what we did, this is a lot of my PhD work, is I started by saying, UML and architecture tools are supposed to be good. Theoretically, they will solve the problem, but why do people not use them? And I realized that they just focus on the wrong things. They focus on design time stuff, while most of the pain that I've heard, about at least 80% of the developers I talk to, they want diagrams from code. They want to see, they want a view of that system. This tool out there, it'll analyze your code, it'll create a layered architecture diagram in a second. It looks at the dependencies, it tries to make all the dependencies going downwards. I can go and talk about more about it. But we built that, we've gotten a lot of feedback, we've got some customers. If anyone wants free licenses here, just drop me a note. But then I kind of realized that this is sort of, on the heavy side of organizations. Really, sort of, I noticed that I had problems even when I was looking at 3 JavaScript files. It sort of sometimes gets complicated in trying to figure out what's going on. And so we've been talking to people on that, and one of the things that really, what I've been hearing is the need for code browsing. I have a problem with this. This is GitHub, right? The problem with this is it's a great view for looking at commits and fisheye. It's not really good for looking at the actual code. It's what's supposed to be doing. This is much better, right? It's an ancient technology, but if you want to look at a particular class, you can go into the implementation. You can go into the Java doc. You can see what's going on. But when I'm talking to developers, they actually sometimes don't find this documentation good enough. They want to look at the implementation. So one of the things that we've built is, essentially Java doc, which you can sort of go into the implementation. You can click on the links there. You can actually browse the code. You can see who's calling it. The second side of things that I've heard actually much more during this week is, being able to actually connect, go from the code to the documentation. Because if they're linked, then you can actually edit the documentation. It doesn't get out of date that fast, right? Just making it easy to modify that. Just putting a small link whenever you're looking at the view to be able to sort of go and figure out the right place in the wiki so it doesn't get out of date. And of course, the same thing on the documentation side when you're looking at it to going back. And lastly, any emails, they're part of the same thing. Stack Overflow is documentation. So that's my summary.